The story begins with Wei, a 21-year-old girl who has developed a special serum from a rare flower. She cuts a small piece of skin from her thigh, divides it into two parts, places them back onto her leg, and applies the serum. Shockingly, the serum fuses the skin pieces back onto her body as if they were naturally grown. Seeing the results, she realizes it's time to finally enjoy life. The next day, she goes to college wearing her friend's skin on her face, and everyone greets her happily. Her friend's boyfriend even mistakes Wei for his own girlfriend and takes her out on a date. Wei is extremely excited because for the first time in her 21 years, she feels the thrill of having a boyfriend. But just when they lean in for a kiss, the borrowed skin suddenly detaches from Wei's face and falls straight onto the boy's mouth. Shocked and terrified, the guy panics, stumbles backward, and falls to his death. The story then shifts to Wei's childhood, where we're introduced to a scientist and his daughter, Wei. Both of them have a strange mark on their faces, something that affected their beauty. The scientist had built a lab in his home and had been experimenting for years. Little Wei is shown drawing a flower called the crop flower. Her father explains that this flower has incredible healing power and sometimes grows deep inside forests. The scientist reveals that he has used this flower many times in his experiments. After a long time, he finally creates a serum that can hide the mark on his face. This serum can merge two different tissues together. He cuts a piece of skin, applies a chemical to it, and attaches it to his face. The moment it touches his skin, the piece starts spreading. It forms new tissues and begins to grow, merging not only with the scar, but also sealing over his mouth. Terrified, he tries to cut it off. He slices away the skin covering his lips, but it keeps reattaching. The skin continues spreading up toward his eyes and nose. Again and again, he cuts it, trying to breathe, trying to stop it, but the skin just keeps growing. Watching all this, little Wei panics. She can't bear to see her father suffer, so in desperation, she plunges a knife into him and kills him. This trauma destroys her life. She had killed her own father, and now she had no one left. Time passes, and Wei continues her studies. Like her father, she excels academically. Eventually, she earns a scholarship to a top university in the US. Leaving her hometown behind, she moves in with her aunt and cousin Angie, who isn't too happy about sharing her room. Wei enters her room and creates a small shrine with her father's photo because she worships him like a god. Soon we see her reading her father's notes and realize she is still continuing the very experiment that killed him. The next morning is her first day at the university. On her way, she runs into a homeless man with a badly damaged face. Wei pauses, watching him for a moment. The man points her toward the university and she walks away. In class, the professor proudly introduces Wei because she scored a perfect 100% on her entry exam, something that hadn't happened in years. After class, Wei sneaks into the science lab to steal a few items. While doing this, the professor spots her and asks, "What are you doing here?" Wei tells him that she needs to run a few experiments and wants to take some supplies from the lab. The professor tells her that removing lab items isn't allowed unless she becomes his lab assistant. If she works with him, she can use whatever she needs. Wei explains that her dad was also a scientist and she needs to continue his research. She's holding her father's research diary, and the professor begins flipping through it. What he reads shocks him. He later looks into Wei's father's background and discovers that he really was a brilliant scientist, but because he never received proper funding, he couldn't fully complete his experiments. Meanwhile, Angie's two friends show up at the house. They start snooping around and end up rummaging through Wei's belongings. That's when they find bloodstained tools, strange experimental materials, and disturbing photos from her father's research. The three of them get terrified by what they see. The next day, Angie is still hanging out with her friends. Wei feels happy seeing them together. She wants friends like that too. So she goes over, tries to be friendly, and even offers to buy them lunch. But because of the scar on her face, they hesitate. They don't really want to go, but eventually they agree. At the restaurant, the moment they see Wei eating in her strange, awkward way, they panic and abandon her right there. Wei quietly packs all the food and later gives it to the homeless man with the disfigured face, the same man she met earlier. She talks to him because she's feeling really low today. She tells him about the scar on her face and how ugly it makes her feel. The homeless man replies, "That's not true. You're beautiful just the way you are." Hearing this gives Wei a little comfort. On her way back home, she runs into her professor again. He offers her a ride and then gives her a proposal. He wants to help her finish her father's research, but he needs her permission since the research belongs to her family. Wei happily agrees. He's the first person who has ever supported her like this. From the next day on, both of them start working on the experiment, but even after many days of effort, nothing works. every result fails. Their hard work seems useless, and the professor gets discouraged. He decides maybe they should stop the experiment for now. On the same day, Angie's friend Alice shows up. She applies to be a lab assistant, and the professor accepts her request. Wei walks home with Alice, and on the way, Alice apologizes for what happened the previous day, and they end up becoming friends. Alice is holding a poster at this moment, one with the picture of that exact same flower, the same flower her father used in his experiments. Seeing this fills Wei's mind with confusion. She realizes that this flower is being displayed in an exhibition. Reading that, she immediately remembers her father's words, how important this flower was for his research, so she decides she's going to steal it. Late at night, she quietly heads to the nearby farmhouse and steals the flower from the exhibition. She brings it straight to the science lab and begins her experiment. Inside the lab, the professor and Alice were already hiding, but Wei, lost in the excitement of her experiment, doesn't notice them. She extracts the essence from the flower and adds it to her experiment. After that, she cuts a patch of skin from her leg, slices it into 2 pieces, and applies the serum. Shockingly, the serum fuses both pieces of skin together perfectly. Then, on the spot where she removed her skin, she applies the same serum and places the skin patch back on. Within moments, the skin turns pale white and then begins regenerating. New skin starts forming right in front of her eyes. The professor watches everything through the window, stunned. He quickly sends Alice away and then walks over to Wei, asking what she's doing. Wei tells him how the flower serum finally made their experiment succeed. Their research was now working. While Wei is showing the professor the skin on her legs, Alice starts feeling jealous. Sensing something is off, she secretly takes disturbing photos of Wei. Then she comes in and scolds Wei, dragging her out of the lab. Wei, shocked by Alice's sudden behavior, gets scared and accidentally leaves her notebook behind. The professor is thrilled to see this. Meanwhile, Alice has already sent those photos to Wei's cousin Angie. At the same time, the professor begins translating Wei's father's diary into English. Angie, after seeing those photos, becomes furious and destroys several things in Wei's room. When Wei arrives and sees the state of her room, she's devastated. Suddenly, Angie attacks her from behind. Wei tries to defend herself as Angie violently tries to kill her. In her panic, Wei grabs a pen and pushes Angie away, but the pen accidentally strikes Angie's eye. It gets lodged deep, killing her instantly. Wei never intended to kill her, but Angie dies on the spot. Panicking, Wei drags Angie's body into the bathroom. Terrified, she doesn't know what to do next. Her mind spirals and she begins cutting Angie's skin. After removing the skin from Angie's face, she injects the serum into her own face and attaches Angie's skin onto herself. The tissues merge, and Wei begins to look exactly like Angie. By now, Angie's mother had stepped out. When she returns home, she sees Wei with Angie's face and embraces her, thinking her daughter has come back. She treats Wei with pure love. Wei likes this new life. She stops being Wei entirely. Each morning, she dresses like Angie and becomes her completely. She enjoys living Angie's life. When she goes to the university, she meets Angie's boyfriend for the first time. For the first time in her life, a boy comes so close to her. Wei loves the feeling. Living through Angie's face, she gets to enjoy Angie's entire life, and she realizes her own life as Wei was painfully boring. Angie had great friends, a loving boyfriend, a sweet mother. She even goes out on dates with Angie's boyfriend. As they were getting close to each other, suddenly Angie's skin started peeling off Wei's face. Seeing this, the guy completely freaked out. It was terrifying. He panicked and began crawling backward away from Wei. While crawling back, he didn't even realize there was a slope behind him. He slipped, fell down, and died horribly. Wei rushed home in panic and began searching for her father's notebook, because that notebook might hold the secret to attaching the skin permanently. She couldn't find her father's notebook anywhere, because it was with the professor. But at that moment, she still had a little bit of serum left. She pulled it out and injected it into her skin again. Angie's face stuck back onto her own face. Meanwhile, we see the professor, who is now searching for that flower, the same flower that could make the experiment succeed. While he's searching for it, the professor gets a call from his translator, the one translating the notebook into English. He warns the professor that this experiment is extremely dangerous. Doing this experiment could be risky. He clearly tells the professor to stop this experiment immediately. But the professor doesn't listen to him. Now Wei goes to the university to get her father's book back. She searches the lab, but she can't find the notebook anywhere because the professor had already given it to the translator. So she calls the professor. The professor tells her, "Yes, the book is with me, but you won't get it now because I'm going to publish this experiment under my own name." Hearing this fills Wei with anger, but she couldn't do anything, so she quietly leaves. As soon as she steps out of the university, she sees Eve. She realizes that Eve was also having an affair with the professor, so she decides to take out her anger on Eve instead. Disguised as Angie, she calls Eve to her house. Eve shows up. The moment she arrives, Wei attacks her in rage. Eve panics and runs, trying to save herself. She sneaks into the garden, but Wei catches her there too, and with a drill machine, Wei attacks her and kills her. After killing Eve, Wei removes Eve's facial skin and attaches it to her own face. Now she looked exactly like Eve. She styled her hair like Eve. She dressed like Eve. And by watching Eve's videos on her phone, she copied her style too, so no one could recognize her. During all of this, the neighbor's dog was barking nonstop after seeing what happened, so the neighbors called the police. But when the police arrived, they saw Wei wearing Eve's face while wrapped in a towel, and they left without saying anything. The next morning, when she went to the university with Eve's face, she felt amazing, because Eve was a very popular student and everyone was happy to see her. After that, she went to the professor's house with Eve's face. She knew she would get her father's notebook from there. The professor had no idea that the person wearing Eve's face was actually Wei, so he let her inside. Wei searched through the entire house for her father's notebook, but she couldn't find it. Angry, she returned home. In the end, she hid the 2 murders she had committed. She threw Angie and Eve's bodies into the pool, and then she checked Angie and Eve's phones. There she found a picture of herself with the professor, the same picture Alice had taken to ruin her reputation. She used that picture against the professor. She emailed those pictures to the authorities. When the authorities found out that the professor had been using girls for his own benefit, they immediately had him arrested. As powerful as the professor's authority was, the very next day he got out on bail and went straight home to restart the same experiment that actually belonged to Wei's father. Step by step, he followed every instruction, created the serum, and tried to merge 2 skin tissues. Shockingly, because of that chemical, the 2 skin tissues fused together, meaning even his experiment worked. And with that success, the professor became overly excited. Meanwhile, we see Eve arriving, but in reality, it wasn't Eve. Wei had come here wearing Eve's face. Seeing her, the professor got even more excited and sat her down in his living room. Then he went to the kitchen to get some food for himself. Now here, Wei needed her notebook. The moment he stepped away, she started searching for it. She found it inside the cabinet. She also found the serum the professor had just created. As soon as she grabbed the serum, she didn't stay for even a second. She ran away. When she ran, the professor felt something was off, and when he opened his cabinet, he realized the serum he created was missing. Later that night, Wei was at home with her real face on. That's when Alice walked in and told her that both of her friends had gone missing in a very strange way. She was extremely upset. Wei hugged her and comforted her. Alice went to drink some water, and the moment she opened the fridge, she froze in pure horror. What did she see? The body parts of her 2 friends stuffed and frozen inside. She screamed in terror. And before anyone could hear her, before she could run or tell anyone, Wei wrapped a plastic sheet around her face and suffocated her to death. Wei hadn't even hidden Alice's body yet when the doorbell rang. The professor arrived. Seeing the lock open, he stepped inside the house. Wei was sitting there in a strange manner. When she saw the professor, she started laughing. Her behavior made the professor uneasy, but when she congratulated him for successfully completing the experiment, he became happy again. But then Wei snapped in anger and said, "This isn't yours. This was my dad's experiment." Ignoring her words, the professor walked toward the fridge to grab his serum. And the moment he opened the fridge and saw the bodies, even his breath stopped. Since the professor was strong and difficult to control, Wei acted quickly. She injected a sedative straight into his throat, knocking him out cold. A little while later, when the professor regained consciousness, he realized Wei had removed all the skin from his body. He screamed in agony. Wei calmly applied the serum on him and placed a piece of skin onto his body. That skin began spreading on its own, just like what happened to her father at the beginning of the story. Wei placed a straw into the professor's mouth so he could breathe, but aside from that small opening, the skin spread everywhere. The professor started suffocating under it, and within moments, he died. The neighbor heard his final screams and immediately called the police. Hearing the police arrive, Wei panicked and ran from the house, knowing she would be caught. The police saw her running and chased her. While fleeing, she reached the homeless man and begged him for help. He hadn't seen the monster she had become. He only knew Wei had always treated him kindly, so he hid her inside his bed. The police couldn't find her, but when Wei suddenly sat up, the serum she was carrying slipped and shattered. When it spilled, the tissues of Wei and the homeless man began merging. Their bodies fused together, transforming them into one horrifying creature. Wei couldn't do anything anymore. She had become a monster and just sat there. That's when she saw her aunt, wandering around, still searching for her daughter Angie. Wei couldn't even tell her the truth about Angie. And with that, the story ends right there. And before we wrap up, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Chilling Hour, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our latest great breakdowns.